And good afternoon, Bruce Pearson with you at Jersey Talk Radio. We are very privileged right now. We're at the Jersey Access Group Conference in Morristown, New Jersey. We have a very special guest, the keynote speaker, who is also quite an amazing woman and military individual of her own right, pilot on the Blackhawks. Desert Storm?
No.
Iraq
and Afghanistan and Operation Jumpstart Border Patrol.
It is a great privilege to meet you, Christina. Christina Eng is the COO of UA Solutions Group. And for those of you that don't know what UAS stands for, or UA, it's unmanned aerial surveillance platforms, or UAVs, or UAPs, I guess. Or
Drones
for the generic name
Drones.
of it. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. And we're kind of on a short leash because you're the keynote speaker and you've got to go to a luncheon. But please tell me a little bit about your background, and then we more importantly want to talk about this topic that's taken over the world by storm, and that's, of course, unmanned vehicles of all types.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me on Jersey Talk Radio. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm excited to be here at this conference and up here in New Jersey. This is a great industry to get the talk started about the use of unmanned aircraft or drones in this industry. So like you said, my background, basically Black Hawk helicopter pilot, deployed to Iraq under the Marine Corps with the Virginia Army National Guard, came home, deployed to the U.S. Border Patrol on Operation Jumpstart with Borstar and Customs Border Protection. And a funny thing kind of happened. I attended a conference, and a bunch of my flight school buddies were at this unmanned aircraft conference, and I asked them, like, what's going on? What are you guys doing? Why are you no longer flying? What are we doing here? And they said, if you haven't noticed, our jobs are about to be gone. We're no longer going. That's an
amazing statement, but it's really true.
It is true. It is true. And this was about 5, 6, 7 years ago. And they told me at that point, they're like, Chrissy, you're already late to the game. You're already late to the game. And they had been in the industry for maybe 2 years at that point, 1 or 2 years, and being late to the game that's only 1 or 2 years old was such a powerful statement for me. So I did some more research and joined an unmanned aircraft platoon with the Florida National Guard. And my Virginia guys always love it when your crew chiefs give you a call and say, will you come and take us into Iraq as our commander?
Wow.
So I couldn't say no to those guys. Yeah, I couldn't say no to them, and we ended up in Afghanistan. So I was in Afghanistan as a UAS brigade advisor to the 116th Infantry
We could do a whole series of shows on that.
I know,
it's
right?
Just unbelievable for somebody that hasn't lived
crazy.
through that. You have no idea. It's like being on a different planet. Everything has got to be twisted, and then to come back to the real world after going through that is. God bless you. Good job.
Yeah, thanks. I loved it, and I love the support that we get from our country, and a big shout out to the men and women before us who made sure that when we came home that we were supported.
Well, unless you have to face that, and the reality, it's one thing to see other people doing it, but when you got to sit down with the JAG guys and fill out the power of attorney and get all the shots, and you're getting ready for deployment, then it really kind of hits home that. You know what? You're ready for it, and you got to do it. That's your job. But
I love it.
It's a game changer.
I loved it.
And I'll tell you, for anybody that hasn't flown a helicopter, your primary training is probably your worst. It's like standing on a beach ball in a pool and trying to stay upright. And
it was.
And it's an uncoordinated piston engine, and you're trying to watch the gauges and fly and not kill anybody, and air traffic control and navigate and all the rest of it. So you have my greatest regards, because it's the hardest thing I ever did to try to get my helicopter license. So
yeah, helicopters are not easy to fly.
Well, they're getting easier though, because they're trying to automate once you get past that primary training. But we're not here to talk about flying helicopters. We're talking about unmanned vehicles, and let's really get into that, because our constituency in this community is very concerned about the opportunities that aerial footage provides to them as content, but also there are many, many ramifications that we can't even begin to imagine. And that's your bailiwick with UA Solutions. So tell us about that organization, what you do, and where you're at, and give us the information these guys
Give you
all
the
want.
information, let you know it all, right?
You know it all in one step.
So when I came back from Afghanistan, I was fortunate to get hired on at the FAA and worked in the Unmanned Aircraft Office, AFS 80, for about 3 years. And while I was there, I realized that there wasn't anybody who had worked at the FAA and unmanned aircraft who was on the outside, basically bridging that gap. And you hear this from our company all the time. We started our company to bridge that gap between industry and the FAA. Okay. So what would happen is somebody wanted to know information about unmanned aircraft, and they would just start randomly calling numbers at the FAA. They didn't know who to call. Right. And then, so it made it really difficult on the FAA. So when I left that office, I promised them, I'm going to give you information from what's happening in industry also. I'm going to give you that information that you guys are unaware of, because you're not a part of the industry at the grassroots level. So it's been a really great collaborative effort. We're here with Unmanned Vehicle University. We work with other companies such as Stampede Global, which is the largest AV distributor in North and South America. Wow. And they're working with the drone video system, which is basically soup to nuts, right? It's the whole system. And one of the things that we have to understand with unmanned aircraft is it's not about the aircraft. It's about the payload and the sensor and the camera on the aircraft itself. So we always tell people, start with that. Do you need to carry a red Epic? Do you need a 2-megapixel camera? Is that going to be okay? Or do you need two dual red Epics because you're going to shoot in 3D? Right. So once we figure out what camera you need, it might be infrared, it might be flare.
The airframe then is derived from that.
Then we're going to work with you on the airframe. Well, once you get the airframe, now you have data. What are you going to do with this data? How are you going to live stream it? Are you going to store it? Are you going to have metadata? Are you a first responder, law enforcement, and you have to understand chain of custody, and you have privacy concerns? How long do you store it? Who has access to it? And the great thing about Stampede, and as we work with them, we're the regulatory side of the house, so we make sure that you have your SOPs and your standard operating procedures are ready to go, your training program is ready to go, your certificates with the FAA are ready to go, your licensing with the FAA is ready to go. And we make sure that you have an entire program stood up. We're not a company that's just going to say, here's a drone, go fly it, or now you have regulations, now you can fly whatever drone it is that you decided to purchase. We make sure that we walk you through all of the steps from the beginning to the end. And we stay with you throughout that time. Oh, and training.
Well, and that's just, and really, and as critical as that is, that's just the tip of the iceberg, because then the operational parameters, you have a spotter, you have a pilot, you have a cinematographer. These are all in your SOPs, and people have to understand, in order to get FAA approval to work as a commercial operation, just explain how that all fits in the regulatory environment, because I don't think most people understand when they go out to one of the local vendors or go on the internet and buy one of these things that you can't go up and shoot real estate and charge for it legally, and with good reason. But you touched on a number of issues that are critical that have never been addressed. As a fixed wing pilot or a balloon pilot, I can take pictures all day. There is no real case law about privacy issues as long as you met the requirements to stay. If you're in a rural area, 500 feet AGL, you can stick a 500 millimeter lens out and take pictures of people all day long. And generally, that was not an issue. But now that it's on an unmanned aircraft and you're hovering over somebody's backyard, well, now it's gained a lot more prominence and attention, and the court system inevitably is going to have to address, air rights issues and air privacy issues. Could you address all those types of things?
So one of the things that we have is called a reasonable expectation of privacy.
Right.
And you're right. I've always wondered, so if I'm flying my helicopter, I can fly over somebody's backyard and take a photo, and up until this point, for the most part, nobody's really thought about it. Nobody's bothered to care, and so we have peeping Tom laws.
Absolutely.
And really, unmanned aircraft need to fall under already established rules and regulations on the books, and case law
right.
already on the books. Now, NTIA, they recently, let's see, about a week ago, it's very new, they came out with some best practices for privacy concerns. And remember, it's best practices. We're not talking laws and rules and regulations.
Right.
It's just recommended best practices. But like I said, there are already a lot of laws on the books, case laws, peeping Tom laws, and that's what you have to understand. The concern with unmanned aircraft is they're cheap, they are small, and because of those two things, people who want to use them for nefarious reasons
are in and out quickly.
Right?
Yes.
And you can fly low over somebody's backyard. Somebody's sunbathing in their backyard. You can fly low over them. However, the drones are pretty noisy. If anybody's flown them or your neighbor's flown them, it is
Somebody's
a weed whacker.
flying a weed whacker.
They're pretty noisy, so you're going to know that it's there. You're going to know that it's there. But that's the concern. People think that because they're so small and maneuverable that they'll be able to just take a look through somebody's window and look at what they're doing inside their house. Well, that's covered under peeping Tom laws.
Sure.
So no difference between that and somebody standing out your window. And to be honest, I think I would rather have a drone outside the window taking video, because at least I can hear it.
Right.
I can't hear a creepy person standing outside
climbing up the drain pipe.
Climbing up the drain pipe, right.
You know, it's funny. I've had a number of different aircraft. I had a powered parachute for a number of years. Excellent platform for still photography or for video, because it's low and slow, very stable. You're flying when the balloons are flying, so you minimal worry about high winds or any of that. And yet, the law stated clearly you couldn't use an uncertificated aircraft for commercial purposes. So it was clearly illegal. I couldn't go out and shoot still photography and sell it to magazines, because technically the acquisition of it was done in an illegal fashion. But people are inevitably going to try to get that shot, of the town hall or whatever, and get up and get down and get it. And there's really, it's a gray area, but it's a very serious area. And also the liability issues that come. These things, people have lost their lives. One of the top pilots, that were flying drones in New York lost his life a year. You caught him in the throat. It's a weed whacker in the very literal sense of that too. And those props spinning at 3,000 or 4,000 RPMs cut very deeply. So it's nothing that you should be fooling around with around crowds without the proper training. And even then, in our operation, we just stay away from crowds. We stay away from people.
So one of the things that we look at is we look at risk mitigation.
Right.
So one of the things that our company does really well is we work with the end user, and we figure out how are we going to mitigate this risk. And one of the things that we are looking at is, can this aircraft get what's called a type certificate? Can it go through the process of the FAA, the same as a manned aircraft, as a Boeing 747, as a Black Hawk helicopter? Can it go through that process and get a type certificate so that we can mitigate that risk? Because that liability,
get insured properly.
You get insured property. All of those things happen, but that's a 3-year process, and nobody's done it yet. There are aircraft in the queue that are working on this, and then we do know that there's a committee out there called ASTM. Give a big plug to ASTM.
American Society of...
And we're coming up with a performance-based approach for ops over people, because we know that this is really important. You want to film a marathon.
Right.
I mean, who doesn't want to film a marathon? I know I would like to.
Well, I've worked in the helicopters with the relay down to the motorcycles.
And I'm sure Marathon Photo would like to also be able to film that. So we have to figure out a way to say yes. Yet we still have to have that acceptable level of risk, and what is that? So we're looking at what's called a performance-based approach, and that's something that our company is working with ASTM to try to determine what is that? What does it look like?
But flight, the practical level of flight profiles. If you're, you can still get the shot and not be right over the top of the crowd at the Boston Marathon. And so those practical operational pre-flight profiles are also an important measure of it too. And I think probably this is beyond the scope of the folks involved in this community, but I think the issues that the JAG community is, hey, we'd like to have some shots. We'd like to have somebody, can we bring someone in to shoot our Memorial Day parade or a ceremony or a ball game or get some beauty shots of the town? What do we need to know as folks in the position we are? I would hope most of these folks realize they shouldn't go out and buy, you know, a Phantom and think you can go do it yourself. Certainly not in the position they're in with regard to the municipality that they work for. What is your response to that? How would they proceed if they need to get some footage and they'd like to avail themselves of the beautiful footage that's out there?
Yeah, so it is a great question, and it's kind of the answer to everything. How do you answer this problem?
It's easy for me to formulate the answer.
No,
it's not
it's
easy.
really, to me, it's easy. There are two ways that you can go about it, and our company helps out with both, or a subsidiary of one of our companies. The first one is, if you're going to hire it out, what we've learned is these municipalities, real estate agents, people who want to hire a drone operator, one of the things we want to tell you is you need a checklist, and you need to know what that drone operator, what their qualifications are. You need to make sure that they have their pilot's license, that they're current, that they have a 333 exemption, that their COA is authorized to be awarded, that they are filing their NOTAM, that they have a motion picture television operations manual. All of this crazy stuff that people who are not in this industry,
have no idea what you just talked about.
No idea, right? I confused you on purpose.
Exactly.
Exactly. So you contact our company, and we will vet those pilots for you. We will look at what they bring to the table and make sure that it is the right person for your job. And one of the things that you have to look at is, you don't want to hire necessarily a drone pilot. You need to make sure that at the end of the day, you need content.
Right.
So really, you need to hire somebody who understands photography, cinematography, broadcast journalism, and
workflow, data management,
and now knows how to fly a drone.
Right.
Flying the drone is secondary to that, to being able to get
compose
that
a
data.
shot and get what you want.
Absolutely.
As a
So
creative.
you really need to look at that. And what's happening is now we have all of these people who got a drone for Christmas, and they see this business model, yet they've never taken a photography class.
No.
They
and I've said this to a million
know,
people.
You know,
just because you can get it in
format.
the air and fly down the street doesn't mean you can compose a shot.
Oh, and it so aggravates me because you really are hiring a photographer,
Right.
who happens to know how to fly an aircraft.
Right.
That's what you want. So that's one way to go about it. However, because unmanned aircraft are so inexpensive, and you can really get them in the hands of your municipalities, there's almost no reason to not have them as a part of your, a tool in your toolbox. So one of the things that our company does is we will work with the municipalities, and we will make sure that they have a program in place to help mitigate their risk and to ensure that they can get the shots that they want when they want them, under current rules and regulations.
See, that surprises me. So and are municipalities purchasing these in your experience now?
Yes.
Wow. Now I could see it for law enforcement. We had a gentleman on a couple months ago from, I think he's from California, had started just basically building a database of operators that would work with search and rescue worldwide. They had, I think, 60 countries. You may know the organization. It was a fascinating show, and they've done a lot of good because these guys would come in as volunteers and women who have the equipment pre-set up, pre-vetted, the communications, and would go into inaccessible places, or just start with infrared. Some of them had infrared capability, and start looking for lost people or injured people or so on and so forth. What a great opportunity. I mean, having been in the Civil Air Patrol and flying a 172 over a pattern is certainly a lot more expensive and time-consuming and perhaps dangerous than sending a drone up over a valley and seeing if, spend a half an hour trying to find somebody.
Yeah,
Quick and in and out.
So for a municipality, a mayor's office, think about being able to run security over your 4th of July parade.
But now that's a law enforcement function. That's different than
you're right.
What these folks would be focused on. They still want to do it.
So then, or you have the mayor's office and they want to do a feel-good piece about come to Morristown, New Jersey, and they want these great opening shots, flying up the river and, showcasing the community.
Right.
That's a great way to use an unmanned aircraft. There are so many ways.
Hundreds of hours.
So yeah, hundreds of hours, and there really isn't a industry that unmanned aircraft can't be a part of and can't help.
We do
everywhere.
We do commercial inspection work. Now it's a heck of a lot better on every level to send that drone up and take a look at the top of the factory, all their air conditioning units, all their vents, all their flashings, the quality of the roof, or up on more importantly, water towers, chimneys, looking, you can go right up there. We take stills off it, we take and they can download the stills. But even home inspections, you want to climb up on a roof with a ladder and poke yourself around and hope you don't slide off and die? Or do you want to send the drone up there, downlink it, bring everything in HD, and have a documented piece of evidence if there was a question with it? So, well, look, we took at the quality of the roof, we took at the flashings, the peaks, anything to do with gutters and so on. So there's a million different applications for that. What kind of cost is involved to have your company come in and provide these solutions for a municipality? Not in detail, but just kind of the range of cost.
So it depends on whether or not you're a public program or whether or not you're going to go the civil route.
Okay.
So that
there's a big difference. Yeah.
Huge difference. And the reason is public entities, if you're considered a public entity under the law, you do what's called self-certification.
Right.
Okay, we can do a whole talk
show on that.
about self-certification.
Right.
So if you call us, we will tell you and explain to you self-certification.
But also, can a private concern that are self-insured if they have the wherewithal and they're a big enough organization? Corporations self-insure, not as much now as they did, but is that self-certification, is that possible in your experience today as it applies to UAVs?
With insurance?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that's not
a separate issue.
It is a separate issue,
Okay.
and here's a dilemma with insurance companies right now. They are not 100% sure. They don't have the data, and they're trying to get the data to figure out how to underwrite these things.
They don't have the claims
figure out
records.
how to claims record. Yeah, they don't know what it is. Are you going to insure it for $1 million? Are you going to insure it for $50 million? Are you going to, what type of liability do you need on it? And there are some great organizations out there that are coming together with the insurance agencies to come up with these parameters. And it's really important, and it's important and interesting, to say the least.
One of the inevitable consequences in a positive sense is you must be, now with your clients at the very least, coming up with a register of people that meet all the criteria, do it by the books, are completely squared away, both legally and operationally, to do exactly what you say is the best we can do without a track record of saying these things crash and burn and kill people and it's mayhem and so on. So is there an organization, and I'm not aware of it, and probably should be, that is developed of professional people that meet all this criteria, as there are in so many other fields?
No, so there are all these drone pilot repositories. For anybody who's received it's called an exemption, kind of like you said before, more civilian term is like the licensing. But the exemption, once you receive an exemption, the next thing that happens is all of these companies start sending you paperwork in the mail. You get all this junk mail. Join our drone pilot repository. You're highly qualified because you have a Section 333 exemption. You must be above and beyond and highly qualified, and not knowing that at the end of the day, the people who might have this exemption might be highly qualified. Then again, they might be somebody who read on a blog, you need an exemption, they got their exemption, they have no idea what it is.
Sent in their box top and
no
off they went.
idea, and here they are in this drone pilot repository.
We're certified as professional. By whom?
Right?
Who's the regulatory agency that certified you? You're right.
So that's important for our companies to vet that out. We do not have what I would consider a drone repository, but we do have a Rolodex of highly qualified unmanned aircraft pilots based off of sort of the criteria that we would go off of. Do you have your manned aviation pilot's license? Are you a Part 61 certificated pilot? How long have you been flying unmanned aircraft? Do you have video? What is your experience level? Do you understand airspace?
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of questions that they don't know.
Well, and then we always get into the real world of the abusers. I mean, the guys that want to fly on the final at
I apologize.
No, not at all. JFK, the people that are going to, fly in the middle of the fireworks display. They're going to fly up the James River in Boston and go in and out of the boats.
Yeah.
Inevitably, and then you'll have, I hate to use the T word, but having spent a career with the Coast Guard, Homeland Security, you know, some scumbag is going to put some type of a weaponized something on a drone and try to pull something off. And I'm just, you know, and I shouldn't be doing this in a public forum, but I'm amazed that somebody hasn't pulled that stunt already that we're at least aware of.
Right. Well,
it's inevitable.
So one of the things I do want to say is for any first responders, or sorry, law enforcement who are listening to this, is make sure that you're out there enforcing these laws, because the FAA has made it very clear. Get out there and enforce these laws. And the reason is, the more that our first responder, or sorry, our law enforcement personnel turn a blind eye to this, and we understand, I get you have more important things to do, but the more you turn a blind eye to it, the more they're going to do it and say, and this is what we hear a lot, oh, the police officer came up to me and asked me a couple questions about my drone and then walked away. Because either the police officer didn't know that they were conducting things illegally, or they just didn't feel like writing a ticket.
Or they didn't have the groundwork to say, all right, what are the protocols to write this person up?
Yeah.
Or to ask them to cease and desist, or they will write them up, you know, and stop the activity. What would you say, or the major, just to wrap up, because we could go on a whole series on these, and inevitably this is a dynamic marketplace, it's an evolving set of circumstances, and so you're gonna, you know, you're in a growth industry, because this is going to push itself to some more well-defined structure, whether it's from the FAA or from law enforcement or from Homeland Security or whoever the direction is coming from. But also, there's a great need for this, and it's a great commercial opportunity. This is a wonderful asset for people in the creative world and in the commercial world to do things that people shouldn't be climbing around in weird places doing.
Dull, dirty, and dangerous.
Exactly. And once again, that's where we'll put the machine up and replace it if it goes down. So what is the one thing you would tell our viewers and listeners if they are in a position to need this content? Contact you? How do they contact you?
Yeah, so
get some advice.
I love text.
Okay.
I love text.
Don't leave a voicemail.
Don't leave a voicemail.
Don't fool email. Text
Seriously,
me. I tell people that every day.
leave a voicemail. So text me. Phone number or text number 757-589-7059. I'm on the East Coast, and I accept texts from 10 in the morning till about 8 at night.
Good.
You can,
and they need to contact you and say, hey, look, here's where we are. What do you recommend? And maybe you can work with them and protect them. The consequences are very dire if something goes wrong, like it is with any other activity involving machines.
But don't allow that fear to stop you.
Well, that's a good news. I didn't think I was going to hear that from you today.
Yeah, no, don't let this stop you. This is an amazing technology. It needs to be in the hands of every municipality. It needs to be in the hand of all the creative people out there. You just have to know the left and the right limits of what you can do.
Good.
Stop reading the blogs and just give us a call. That's all I can say. Stop reading the blogs, give us a call, and we will work you through that process and help to mitigate that risk, because it's such an incredible tool and so important, especially for, we look at Hurricane Sandy. We used it there. You look at Katrina, you look at Joplin. You look at all these natural disasters, and that's really where your mayor and your municipalities and people involved in your community, that's where you get your bang for your buck. It's so important.
Well, Christina, thank you so much for being with us. We're looking forward to your keynote address, and thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service.
No, listen. Anybody that flies a Black Hawk, I'm bowing down in front of you, man. That's really cool. Thank you very much for your time being with us today. This will be available online, video on demand, and we look forward to having you speak to us again. I'd like to have you on my radio show, and we'll see what we can do for you.
Will do. Thanks.
Have a great one.
You too.
This is Bruce Pearson, Jersey Talk Radio. We're at the Jersey Access Group Conference in the Hyatt in Morristown, New Jersey. We'll be back after this. Thanks for being with us. Don't go away.